Hello, everybody, and welcome to an In Crowd 815 podcast special, the hot Rockford housing market, as I bring a bunch of our guests onto the screen and fill everybody in on what in the world is going on today. Let's see if this will work right there. Thank you very much. There we go. There we go. The Wall Street Journal published an article on April 25th, 2024, and they ranked the top real estate markets in the United States according to them and Realtor.com. And they placed Rockford at number one, top of the list. And this ranking, they said, evaluated the real estate market and economic health of the 200 most populous metro areas in the country. The Rockford metro area was the only one in Illinois to crack the top 50. Peoria landed at number 59. So word is definitely out now. Rockford is an extremely affordable place to live. If you've ever checked the cost of living pretty much anywhere else in the country or lived anywhere else for that matter, you know this to be true. You already knew this. The big challenge now, of course, like the rest of the country, is that we need more inventory. The current supply of available homes for sale does not meet the current buyer demand. And to talk about that topic today, I'm honored to be joined by a roundtable of exceptional local leaders. Toni VanderHeyden first became a realtor in 2004. She founded the first Keller Williams Realty franchise in Rockford in 2008. She remains the operating principal, as well as continuing to be an active realtor herself, leading arguably the most successful real estate team in the area, in the 0.5% top of all agents in the nation. Team sold On Toni, and of which I've been a buyer specialist on her team since 2013. Tom McNamara has served the City of Rockford for 11 years now, last 7 as mayor. Before that, served 4 years as one of our aldermen. Ron Clewer has been the Illinois market president at Gorman and Company the past 5 years, previously CEO of the Rockford Housing Authority. And he writes a substack very extensively on housing concerns all across the country. Conor Brown has been serving now 5 years as the CEO of the Northwest Illinois Alliance of Realtors, and he's got over 20 years of experience in government affairs and real estate related advocacy. And then John Groh, the president and CEO of Rockford Area Convention and Visitors Bureau, the RACVB, and GoRockford.com. Except for a 2-year stint with the Chamber of Commerce here in Rockford, he's been with the RACVB since 1999. And I think we can all say we all care deeply about our Rockford area community. We've agreed to be here today to talk about the specific topic of Rockford housing. And just to clarify, we're not here to debate anything. This is more of a brainstorming session to help find solutions to the challenges that we currently face when it comes to our current lack of housing inventory. And by way of personal introduction and icebreaker, if you will, I've asked these wonderful people to share a little something about Rockford that they love that might not show up in a tourist brochure. So, Toni, if I can get you to go first, what do you love about Rockford that maybe isn't in one of John Groh's Convention and Visitor Bureau's brochures?
You know, my family, Greg, good question, loves being outdoors. And so I think probably our favorite thing about the Rockford area happens to be just the amount of parks available to you and the variety of things that you can do in them, from Rock Hut State Park, paddleboarding on the lake, to Atwood Park, mountain biking. And my kids, my grandbabies, and all of our dogs do runs, along the Kishwaukee. So I would say the Park District and the Forest Preserve areas.
Mayor McNamara, you got something you can share that you love about Rockford that's not in the brochures?
Okay, so appreciate the opportunity to be on with you and everyone else this morning. I would say the one thing that I really love that does not show up in brochures is the ability and the ease that there is to really get involved in Rockford and make an impact. I think if you're a younger person moving to our area, you really have the pick of the litter of saying, this organization or this issue is important to me, and you can get involved and you can do it in a meaningful way. And I shouldn't just say young person, if you're anyone, you can get engaged and get involved very quickly, but you can also do it in an incredibly meaningful way, and you can see the impact of your work immediately.
All right, Ron?
Sure. So thank you, Greg, for hosting today. Happy to be on. I've lived in Chicago, and I've lived in a small town in central Wisconsin, 336 people compared to millions. And what I think is most attractive to me in Rockford hints on what the mayor was saying. It is a very, it's considered a large city. However, it's very intimate. So the ability to engage and interact across the city and know people, on any side of town, be engaged with people. I think any city is really driven by the quality of the people who live there. And we have some really wonderful residents. And so it's great to use all the assets we have, but I think the biggest is the people that we're able to live next to and work next to.
Absolutely. All right, Conor Brown, how about you? What would you like to share about Rockford that you love?
Besides the amazing pizza, I would say the mobility. I mean, I think that doesn't show up on brochures, but the fact that you could get to your kid's soccer game in 15 minutes after work, you're never late. I can't count the number of times like, oh shoot, I have a meeting downtown and I gotta race, across town, but it's only 20 minutes. You can be anywhere. And so I think with so many people having demanding careers, or just even on the weekend, I mean, like Ron, I've lived elsewhere and I've lived in the DC metro area. I mean, going to Home Depot was a half a day experience, like we actually had to find parking to go to Home Depot. And so, just to take that for granted, is really something, I think a lot of people here in the Rockford region don't realize, but a lot of people coming into the Rockford region really find incredibly special.
Absolutely. That's my answer too. Now for the tough one, John, the one that makes all these brochures and stuff. You might have a tougher one there. What do you got for us?
Well, I think these are all good suggestions that we can add to our brochures, but I was going along the food line like Conor. We do have great pizza, but I was thinking more of a place that it probably is in a brochure. I know it is, but maybe under-known by many, and that is a little restaurant on Seminary Street on the Bear Meadows campus, the Bear Den. Great place for breakfast or for lunch. Really unique, shows you the flavor of an industrial, hardworking community. You'll sit next to guys who are out in the scrap yards, and you'll get a great burger or egg sandwich, and everything in the restaurant's made or was sourced from the scrapyard, and is a pretty amazing place. So Bear Den, and that's Bear with an H, and I would encourage folks to check it out.
And I've driven by that place numerous times. I've never been inside.
Well, Greg, let's go for lunch.
Check it out. Awesome. Well, to start things out for us today, I mean, the top question that we have here to start things off, this Wall Street Journal article comes out. Them and Realtor.com say that Rockford is the #1 hottest market in the country. And my question to you guys is, and I'll ask you to raise a hand, let me know who wants to go first on this. Why do you think they said that? What do you think it was that caused them to? Obviously, they're doing stats, they're checking things across the country all the time, and they're seeing numbers. Was this just a numbers game that they said, oh, based on increase in home values, that's the hottest market in the country? What do you think caused them to even write this article in the first place and put the spotlight on Rockford? Anyone got a comment to start? Ron, go ahead.
I mean, it is in part numbers. I mean, it's always about numbers and demographics, but this wasn't just the increase in housing prices, but the stability and the affordability, and built on the fact that we're a great region, right? There's a great deal to offer, and so quality of life was one of those scoreable factors. So it put all those pieces together, and said this is a great place to live.
Hey, Greg. In my opinion, after selling real estate in this area for 25 years, when that came out on the Wall Street Journal, I was like, no kidding. This is our same community. You finally are realizing, and I think it's really a source of data. The data just finally put us on the map because we have our foot in aerospace. We have many, many opportunities in this area. We're still equidistant from Madison, Milwaukee, Chicago. We've got a beautiful river running through our city. I mean, we've not changed. The data fact of our affordability with the current work that we've all been doing in this city finally hit the papers, right? It's just the data.
I often tell people when I talk to people from out of town, back in 2004, ironically enough, 20 years ago, just about this month, I went through a big change in my life, and I had to decide if I was staying in Rockford or not. And my wife and I kind of did a deep dive into communities across the country. It's like we can go anywhere. My wife's a teacher; her job's in demand, and I was in radio broadcasting at the time, and the opportunities that came my way, the two biggest ones were in San Luis Obispo, California, and in near Lynchburg, Virginia. So both coasts were kind of looking at us in the face. And guess what I found when I started looking at cost of living in both of those places?
Yeah.
I had to easily be making 2 to 3 times as much money in my vocation to even live, the life similar to what we're living here in Rockford. So our decision to stay in Rockford, besides loving our family so much and all the family that we have here in the Midwest, also boiled down to cost of living. And that really hasn't changed over the last 20 years. Cost of living here has just been exceptional.
Greg, I would add, I think Ron and Toni hit on a lot of it, but I mean, it's certainly affordability. It's certainly the location. I won't dive into all of the Wall Street Journal's data points, but I would say it's also, we have tremendous amount of momentum right now. You look at the amount of economic development that is taking place. I mean, I can't recall the last time in our area that we have 4 or 5 more than $300 million development projects taking place. And I think it's also what I said at the beginning of the great thing I love about Rockford that's not on the brochure is people can make an impact. I would also add to that Rockford is unique that we never shy away from challenges, and we usually go towards them, but we go towards them together. So you look at like educational attainment. Well, now if you own a home in Rockford, your kids get to go to college for free. You look at internet access that is troubling all over the country. We're now putting fiber optic cable in front of every single home, business, and organization. We see a challenge and we try to meet that need. And when we do it at our best, we're doing it together.
Right.
Well said.
Greg, you mentioned, why they wrote the article, and I love the fact that they referenced their previous article from 2014, where we were dead last in the country. We were the underwater mortgage capital of America. And I remember when that story came out, and, we're kind of scrambling locally on, how do we respond? And, there were programs for people to right-size their mortgages. And, we're really trying to get the word out locally. And it was kind of a punch in the gut. And, but, to have the national recognition, I think locally, there's still some people in disbelief, that we're not a great market to be in, that, we're not a great place to live in. And I think having the numbers to kind of back it up to say, listen, we've experienced enormous growth in value of our homes here. And there are a lot of people moving from California, Chicago, East Coast into our community because of, yes, there's the affordability factor, but there's also the value factor. We can compare numbers, but, look at, what you can get from a price per square foot, how big the backyard is, all of those things that people just can't get over. Like, really, I can get all of this and still be at work in 10 minutes. I mean, it's mind blowing to them.
And Greg, one thing that I keep seeing people say, at least in Rockford, is this all happened so suddenly. And I actually would push back against that. I think that's happened due to a lot of hard work over more than a decade. I mean, one thing that I know Conor's been very much involved, and last night I had the opportunity to go to our school board meeting. And I believe it was 2012, 2013, we had a 15.8% property tax rate, and our property values were dropping year after year. Taxes going up and values going down every single year. Well, we made a concerted effort. The school district led the charge and said they're not going to increase property taxes. And then the city followed, and we have not increased property taxes in more than a decade. And I don't know of a city and a school district that combined have said, we're just not going to increase property taxes and both drop property taxes in that time period. I can't think of another one in Illinois or in the Midwest. And today, we're not where we want to be, but we're that 15.8 just got in the mail. It's now 10.3. My value has almost doubled in my home. It's not by coincidence. It didn't just happen. It's through so much hard work. And I'm only mentioning one piece. Everyone on this has done a lot of hard work in so many areas.
True. So we know we've got a hot market for houses, and we know we have people moving to our area. They're doing the kind of the reverse of what I did 20 years ago. They're looking at some of them. I think are choosing maybe not to move here because of salary. They look at the salary first and then don't get into the cost of living part of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, hey, if you look at both sides of that coin, you're going to realize you can make a little bit less money in Rockford. Not that you will, but you might. And you can still get by just fine because the cost of living here is so much better than pretty much anywhere else in the country. I don't know how many people do that. I don't know how many people you guys interview as far as potential jobs coming into Rockford that people are saying stuff like that. Are you hearing anything like that from potential job candidates?
As far as affordability, Greg?
Yeah, if they're just looking at the bottom line of their salary and not really looking at the cost of living on it.
Oh, I see. I think in our world, we get the surprised folks that say, I can get what kind of house for what kind of money?
Right.
Yeah. And so people coming in from California, especially people moving here from Chicago. We just recently had a professional move in from Chicago who was working with one of our buyer's agents. And she was like, I cannot believe how little this house costs. And the buyer agent said, don't worry, I think we can get it for an even better price. I'm going to watch your back. We'll negotiate it for you.
To that point about cost of living comparisons, on madeforrockford.com, which is a talent, attraction website that we have that helps explain all the benefits of living in Rockford. There's a great cost of living calculator that whatever metro market you're in the country, you can enter and then enter our DMA to see, as it relates to housing, as it relates to groceries, as it relates to medical and other core categories that we all spend our money on, how much further your money will go here than in other markets. And if it won't go as far here as it does in the market you're currently living in, it'll tell you that too. So it kind of contextualizes category by category. And we have heard from major employers that are using that with potential recruits that it's a great tool for folks looking to understand how much further their dollar goes here than in other communities.
Trying to look up the website real quick, madeforrockford.com?
Madeforrockford.com, yep.
Okay, for some reason I'm not getting that to come up for me, but to see if I can correct the address on that one. So we got great resources here in Rockford. We have awesome resources all over our area. So the top challenges now that we have that we're facing to meet current home buyer demand. Our current home buyer demand, we all know, is definitely above this current supply. And I remind people that it's going to be that way for a very long time because building houses, it's not like building cars. We can't just fire up the car building plant and kick out a bunch of houses. It just doesn't quite work that way. So are you seeing any solutions that are worth brainstorming about here today that we can kind of knock around as far as ideas go?
I want to give a shout out to the city for the work they're doing to really look at how do they change the environment to spur housing development in the city. I think often we see communities look at how do we invest in business growth and focus a bunch of money there. But I think we've realized that we also need to focus on housing growth. And so, I'll admit I'm pretty hard on the city sometimes on land use regulations.
I'm recording all of this right now.
That's okay. You can replay it. I'll admit it anytime. I'm hard on you guys because it requires that we look at internally what we're doing for land use and all kinds of other permitting requirements. And the city is diving deep into that. The 3-year tax abatement for new construction is an example. The consideration of rescinding some of the 2008 land use regulation changes to spur additional development. These are things that are important. But I think we often look to our city leaders to suggest that they have to create solutions. But I think as citizens, we also have to think about our own role. There's a strong need for more than just single family housing in the market. There's a need for multifamily. And, unfortunately, the one thing that I think I'm going to press our community to be better at is to get rid of the not my backyard mentality and think about the need for duplexes, 4 families, 3 families. I live in Edgewater, and I was surrounded by single family homes mixed with duplexes and fourplexes. And that neighborhood's a solid neighborhood. We didn't fall apart because multifamily was mixed into a single family neighborhood. We need to get back to that. And the city can give us all the tools, but if the neighbors come out and rise up, like I see they're doing around the apartment property near Lino's, the proposed apartment property, we've got to think about the fact that we need additional housing inventory at all price points, rental and for sale, and that multifamily is an option.
Mm-hmm.
Ron's right. I'll say one of the challenges we have, and I think maybe other cities have it, we're just, if I'm being honest, we're understaffed. And so I think we kind of move from one fire to the next fire. And I think we do benefit from, we joke about Ron being tough on the city. I don't know necessarily if he's tough on the city. I think he's doing what he should be doing. He is pushing us to do better and better and to think of things that are different. Realtors do the same thing. I don't take it as like, oh my gosh, they're beating down on us. I take it as give me more and more ideas. So Ron touched on the property tax rebate. It's one idea, and we've worked with realtors and many others to get that done. So you build a new residential unit, single or multifamily, you get 3 years of your property tax rebated. You get waived of all of your permit fees, all your water connection fees. So you build in a $200,000 property, that's about a $26,000 savings to you. And oh, by the way, you'll have fiber optic cable. Oh, by the way, we'll pay for your kids to go to college. Oh, by the way, we're going to have a metro line from Rockford to Chicago. And so we're trying to layer these incentives on, but we have to have more. One of the biggest things we struggle with, and probably people on this can better articulate it than I can, our property values, we keep saying, are going up, which is fantastic, but they're not going up enough. Our assessed value to construction cost is still out of whack. And so why we're providing that incentive package is we're just trying to bring it back a little bit. And we're not there yet. Someone like Toni or Ron or any of you could say this better than me, but I would say in my head, we're still $25,000 to $50,000 gap that we got to close. And I think some of that is value increase. I think some of that is some risk and some investment that needs to take place on the private market. But it all has to come back in. And that's just a big challenge that we're still seeing.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge in that our pricing is edging towards that amount where it makes it worth to build a property. Yet the biggest challenges are, number one, we're working with businesses that expect to make a profit, right? Builders that expect to make a profit. The other side of that is the building constraints now with, I factor it's probably $25,000 to $35,000 additional overlay to meet code, right? And so all of that is chinking away at that opportunity of why would I consider Rockford, even though my kids can have higher education for free, fiber optic kit, right? We need to close that gap. And I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges. I think it's something that can be met. And the fact that our average sales price, Conor, I believe we're at about, as a board, like 186 right now.
We're higher. Like April numbers haven't been published yet. I mean, they've been published internally, but not pushed out to the media.
Okay.
So we're about
Are you going to break
250,000.
news right now, Connor?
Yeah.
Breaking news.
Connor, what was April's number for?
So we had 290 homes sold, which was a 7% increase. Our average sale price jumped 14.5% to $204,500.
Okay.
So last year was $178,800.
Okay. Yeah. So we're edging that direction, right, to close that gap for a business person builder to say, now it makes sense.
Right. And I think you look at the numbers behind that, to Toni and the mayor's point, our labor costs roughly, I work all over the state, and our labor costs to construct homes are roughly about a percent higher than the Chicago market, nearly 1%. It's just under 1%. But the material costs are close to 4% higher than we see in the city. And I think a lot of that is supply chain and distribution costs, right? Because it actually comes to our local businesses when we buy them from the city or somewhere nearby. But our average sale price now at 204, I think you said, right, Connor?
Yes.
In Chicago, their median sale price is going to be more towards the 400,000 mark. So there's that profitability there. And as a real estate developer, we're often looked at as greedy and making all this money because somebody sees you do a $20 million project and they think you're walking away with $20 million. And the reality is the margins are slim.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we look at what's been produced in our market, a lot of great downtown redevelopment because of the historic tax credits. And so you layer in the River's Edge tax credit at 25%, and you layer in the federal tax credit at 20%. That helps bridge that gap so developers can walk away with a slim margin. And that doesn't come in other areas of the city, unfortunately, because most of our historic stock is in the downtown. But on the other side, we are seeing, and the mayor and Conor and Toni can speak to this, we are seeing new construction homes on the high end market, right? I mean, those are folks who can afford to say, I'm going to stay in Rockford. I'm going to just, invest in this home because I'm going to be here a while and eventually it'll catch up. But you're seeing those high end homes off of, Guilford and Mulford and over off of Perryville start to pop back up. So those are all good things, right? We just have to find how do we build housing for the middle market?
Mm-hmm.
How do we replace our old housing stock that is really that entry level housing or folks coming into the market for homes? Those are aging. 85% of our housing stock was constructed before 1979.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got to think about that. As we all get old, we all need a little bit of help. And those homes are no different than, me and going to the gym.
Guys, I think it's time to revisit the concept of victory housing again, like during World War II. As I travel around the country, I love looking at real estate. I love looking at what cities are doing around real estate and how people actually live. For example, Bentonville, Arkansas, outside of right downtown, the average income is roughly the same as Rockford's. And I notice time and time again, people are living in less than 1,000 square feet, right? So how do we construct homes in such a way that the average person can actually have a place to live, right? And start to invest and get them out of the rental housing market and into owning a home. And I really have just been toying with that idea of it's back to victory homes again, right? Maybe no basements. Right? What can we do to create a home that is affordable in areas where people are actually choosing to work?
And that's where those land use regulations come back in, right?
Thank you, Ron.
We have minimum house sizes, minimum lot sizes, but the city's working on that again. So also kudos. I do think one area that we could improve on, I'm seeing in other communities in the single family market, is the municipality will come up with a number of home plans and they'll pre-approve those, right? So you just come into the city and say, I want to build a house. And they say, here's the Sears catalog, so to speak, of pre-approved houses. And you're immediately getting a building permit as opposed to having to go through and think about the longer process due to permitting and zoning, et cetera.
Right.
So I've also seen the land bank is a great asset to our community. We we looked at how might we, I think the mayor was on that original exploratory committee. Conor, you were, and we did it as a community, right? We got that done. And so I think some of those lots, one of the areas as we think about infill, might be something that we did at Gorman in Milwaukee, which was infill and renovation of homes. But on those infill lots, we don't always know how the structures were torn down.
Mm-hmm.
And so, nowadays you can use ground penetrating radar for a couple grand and just look at what the risk is at that particular lot. And we might be able to prioritize some of those lots that are ready, willing, and able to be built on, because it'd be quicker and easier to market as opposed to added cost of now digging up a former foundation or footings that could be in those sites. So I think that's an option. We worked with the city of Milwaukee to buy lots in mass and then come in and build homes on them.
Mm-hmm.
I only downloaded one graph to present in this whole thing today, and the one graph is this one here. If it'll come up for me, hopefully it'll come up.
Yep.
The housing inventory active since about 2016 to today, and when I started working with Toni here in real estate in 2013, obviously we were still coming out of the short sales and all that fallout from the 2008 crash. And here we are, in 2017 and 2018, begging people to sell their homes because inventory was so low.
Mm-hmm.
And look at where we are now.
Right.
Just so those who maybe don't think we're having as much of a crisis as we are as far as housing inventory goes, this is the only graph really that you need to see.
Mm-hmm.
We are desperately seeking inventory, and whether that means building new stuff or refurbishing the old that's refurbishable, that's kind of what this whole discussion is about today, is where do we go from here, and what else can we do? Is there something that we're missing? Obviously, Mayor McNamara has pointed out that the city's doing a lot of great things to incentivize making builders to at least give a second thought to building here at Rockford and putting more stock into what we have available to buy. Is there anything that we're missing? Is there anything that's kind of glaring and jumping out that you can say, that's something else we should try?
Well, great. Toni, I'm curious if you can contextualize that for us. How does that graph look in comparable markets across the country? Is this a local situation that we're facing, or is it very common throughout the country right now that inventory would be down?
It's local. I have a house in Arizona. Houses are sitting in Arizona on the market for 6 months now, 180 days. I have part of my team that works out of Tampa, Florida. I just went down to visit with them. Same thing there. You are looking at 4 to 6 months sitting on the market. This is extreme. This is extreme. My business partner's been in real estate for 40 years. He said he's never seen anything like this.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a challenge nationally of underproduction, period, but not an inventory problem like we have. So one of the things I'm curious about, question for both Conor and Toni, when we look at that graph, and in 2013 we had, I think it was roughly 1,600 homes on the market. Now we're below 200. I mean, any good retail outlet, which is in essence what home sales is, any good retail outlet is, how do you manage inventory and have the right amount of inventory on the shelves? That's going to be our key to economic success as a community, I believe. 1,600 was clearly too many, right? What do we feel is an appropriate number of homes to have in the market? I know lots of changes, seasonal changes, that kind of stuff, but just a rough estimate of what we believe would be good, because then that gives us an idea of what we need to build to.
Yeah. What's your opinion of that, Conor?
Yeah. So one thing we measure is absorption rate. And so basically, if we weren't going to add any new listings to the market, how fast it would sell. And so, we'd sell out in half a month, basically. That's, so we got about 2 weeks supply. That's nothing. More balanced market, in my opinion, is probably about 4, 5 months, maybe 6 months. That's not favoring the seller. That's not favoring the buyer. There's just a healthy churn of the market. I think during our peak of absorption rate, we were at over a 14-month supply. You look at even some of the higher end homes, if you're trying to sell $1 million property in Rockford, in 2014, the rate was probably more like 10 years. Like there would probably be one that sold every 10 years. So, it can fluctuate a little bit seasonally. So obviously right now, it's kind of our busy season, if you will. But we probably need about, 7 times the number of homes we have on the market. So just to kind of balance it, I would say with its current demand, but it would probably fluctuate a little less during the winter months, but that would be my response.
So you're looking at 1,500 to 2,000 homes on market would be a beautiful thing, wouldn't it? Because our market now goes to the Mississippi. We've enlarged our board.
Yeah.
Right. So this is a catch-22 because when those houses, whenever that happens, do hit the market, then supply and demand is going to cause our average sale price to go down.
Right.
And now we've just enlarged that gap to, does it make sense to build? So
Right.
I do believe this is a necessary evil of not having enough houses so that our housing price can go up. It's going to fluctuate once more houses get back on the market.
Right. I think if we look at the Rockford housing study recently, we're talking about how do we increase production to 300 to 600 homes a year, roughly, right? And I think that takes into account some for obsolescence of existing home stock, but then also the growth in jobs that's anticipated. I think that's another area we need. I see the general public to understand. There was a big belief that when Chrysler closed and people exited the market, that we had all this excess inventory. And the reality is that never happened, whether it was the for sale market or the for rent market, because we were already inventory constricted at that time. So, when we say that those jobs are now in essence coming back, these folks are coming back to a market with no housing for rent or for sale. And so, being able to increase that production is important. That Barbara Coleman project is huge for our community, and we have to embrace that and accept it. The 30 units over by Lino's, big deal. We have to embrace that and accept that. Do we have some concerns as a community about multifamily because of some bad actors? Yes, but not all actors are bad, and not all product that is more than a single family house is bad. It's absolutely essential for us to be in a successful market.
Ron, I like to think about, it helps me visualize success when we talk about communities, and Toni too. You mentioned Bentonville, and they're doing a lot of things right in a lot of ways, including housing and product from a quality of life and tourism perspective. But what are some of those cities that are doing multifamily well? Ron, I think you and I have talked about some Indiana communities that are doing it well with those pre-approved housing plans and infill. Toni and Ron, what are those cities that you're seeing that we should be looking to?
I'd be glad to put some study behind that, but I will tell you what I see overall, both in visiting cities, smaller cities our size, as well as entertaining recruits for hospitals and so forth. They want community, they want walkability, they want grocery stores. I just tell them we're not going to have walkability for you. You have to get in your car and get to the grocery store. I do see Bentonville making strides that direction, in that they are creating pretty cool little subsets of communities through their town. I think that's something definitely we could probably look at.
Yeah, I think there's a number of communities on the list, and closest to us is Chicago and Madison, right, who are doing a great job of creating what they call the 15-minute city, right, where everything you want, need, and must have is within a 15-minute walk, to Toni's point, right, that you're less dependent on automobile traffic. And I think that it wouldn't be hard to get that in our downtown core or in other small kind of centralized business districts around our region, where we just look at maybe to spur additional housing, we're just missing the grocery store, or we're missing this, and being able to place those in those areas to, increase that walkability and the access, right, to make life a little more convenient for folks there, so that their ability to afford those things is one thing, their ability to get to them quickly is another thing. But yeah, I mean, locally, Chicago in areas, I mean, the city of Chicago just passed that $1.25 billion bond issuance to balance economic growth and housing together. And that is to, look at how do they incent housing with less reliance on TIF. And so that to me is an interesting approach, that they wanted to be more equitable, because if you look at those communities where TIF monies are deployed, generally they don't have all those creature comforts and quality of life components, and they're not getting the greater benefit. And where the most successful are in the higher end portions of the community, where the TIF really is no longer necessary. And so this was a way to balance it in the Chicago region. But there's a lot of wonderful communities. South Bend, Indiana is doing a great job of kind of near net zero housing. They've used this model with Habitat, but they've also used it with the CDC. And I think we are lucky enough on Rockford, RLDC, sorry, with RLDC and the CDFI that they created. Thank you. I was going to struggle with the acronym, but Community Development Finance Institution. Years ago when we were talking about the need for the land bank, a CDFI was a big part of that conversation. It's a way to lend money into a community that comes at a lower cost to spur development, and it's good that we have one, but we need multiple. And I think that's part of our challenge, to solve for that, to get other CDFIs in our market, because they can do more than just housing. They can do the grocery store, like we did it with IFF when I was at the Housing Authority over on West State. It put groceries back into a neighborhood that hadn't had it for 30 years. So so it's not always just about the housing, even though I'm a houser by heart. It's making sure that folks have access to those things near their housing that is going to make even more demand for housing in that area.
Ron, I would also say all of that also, you mentioned multifamily and sometimes the difficulty of getting those approved. I would say all of this is also about education and advocacy, because if it's multifamily or multi-use paths, not many people appreciate them. Not enough people, I should say, appreciate them, because I think historically our town is, as Conor mentioned at the beginning, 15 minutes. He said 20, but I drive faster. So 15 minutes where you want to be. And so people are just used to jumping in that car. But today's folks, if it's seniors, younger, whoever it is, they want more options and walkability. And so you look at, we're trying to put a multi-use path on Highcrest. That would connect the river and downtown and the west side to the far east side. And it has been not the easiest. You look at, the multi-use path that we're going to be putting down Auburn Street. Again, not the easiest to get approved, but all of these things, I think, play such a critical role. And I think the last two things I'll say on this is, I think nationally, we have tried to push people, and probably people in my positions across the country have tried to push people into it's an either or thing. And I think we as a community can really do change if we just say we can do an and. It doesn't have to be this or that. We can do both. And I would lastly say, if you look back over Rockford's history, we rarely, if ever, regret saying yes. And we almost always regret saying no to something.
Right.
It is hard to get that through to some citizens and most elected officials, but we almost never regret when we actually do take a leap and do something big.
One last area I just want to throw in the mix that I've pushed on for a long time is the connection to home and neighborhood and health outcomes, right? And what I'm seeing across the nation, and have since I was at RHA, and I've also pushed on our health systems, and I'm thankful that Shelton is over at the Health Council, thinking about how might we look at reducing our Medicaid, Medicare health costs as a community and leverage that. I mean, the data is clearly there. Investment in quality, affordable housing in good neighborhoods lowers healthcare costs. It's there, right? And so, what we're seeing, not to bring up health turmoil, but we saw large health systems saying that they were giving up on Medicaid, Medicare billings some time ago because they weren't getting reimbursed. Well, the rules around that is somebody coming in for the same health conditions more than once, you don't get paid after the first time. And so rather than walk away and say, we're losing money at this, if we were to think about it, how a health system might invest in homes, like Swedes used to do along the Charles Street corridor, those investments, are great for employees, but also great to put people in the neighborhoods around hospitals, but also that are healthy homes that improve their health outcomes. So that's another area where I see funding available to assist in the production of housing.
Well, I think we need to put a pretty little bow on this whole conversation. I know you got obligations throughout the rest of your day. So by way of doing that, is there one thing that a typical Rockford citizen can maybe do or advocate for or promote that would help push this all along? I mean, we've got a lot of reasons, cost of living reasons, better health reasons, just overall great reasons to be in Rockford. And we all believe in the strength and the future of Rockford. But to build up our housing inventory and to give people some options and to give people some opportunities to be homeowners, is there a single thing that we can focus on to really help give people marketing orders, if you will?
I'll go first. I think, and it ties into what the mayor was saying, is have a mentality and an attitude and ask questions that get to yes, rather than, if you don't understand something, if you want more information, if you're not sure that you're in favor of it, ask questions that have open-ended opportunities for dialogue. And I think communities that are successful get to yes through conversation, collaboration, and sometimes compromise.
I'll just add on to what John is saying, and I agree with that. The no mentality, I don't want it, and the not my backyard is, really a challenge in several communities, especially in ours when it comes to anything but single family. And so how do we ask those questions? How do we remain open? How do we really check our attitude to get to a yes? And, there's a large movement of YIMBYs, which is yes in my backyard. And I think that's where we need to be as a community if we want to remain on this successful path and continue to grow our community. Because the no is in part while the past years we saw population decline in some of our challenge. So we have a great opportunity before us. To the mayor's point, we've never regretted saying yes. And so let's get to that yes.
I would add one, I'd be not in my position. So if I didn't say this, one, vote, get educated and vote. Two, bring your ideas forward. What makes Rockford really unique is if you want to talk to me, you want to talk to John, Ron, Connor, Toni, you can do so. And you can probably do so in the next 72 hours if you really want to do that. So bring those ideas forward. We want them. We listen to them. And some of the best things going on in our community are an idea that just a citizen brought forward. May have taken some time, but it came to fruition. And then lastly, I would say, and this will get me in trouble, but there is no wall around Rockford. So if you don't like it, you can certainly move and add that housing stock to the market. And I would say, and if you do like it, like I do, become an ambassador. And that does not mean run for office. You can and you should, but it just means have some pride, love your hometown, understand what great things are taking place, and appreciate those, and also help us address those challenges that we still face.
Yeah.
we're blessed to be in a very mobile country. So you're if you don't like it, you don't have to stay. Good news, you can go somewhere else. But and I want to echo what you guys all said. Share your ideas. Let us know what your thoughts might be. Attend the occasional city council meeting and such, and make your voice be heard. And we've got that opportunity here, so it's a good thing. Any final comments before we let you go? I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, I appreciate everyone's ideas, and I appreciate working with such a fine group of people in the city.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Thanks for inviting us to the conversation, Greg.
Greg, thanks for bringing us together.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Greg.
There's no single solution to this thing. We all need each other to kind of pull forward and look for new ideas, and hopefully we can find new ways to add housing stock here to Rockford. So you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll keep in touch and keep this conversation going.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In crowd, 815. In crowd, 815. In crowd, 815.